Russia, meanwhile, has closed off its airspace to flights operated by carriers from places such as Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia and Slovenia. Now, this comes as a tit-for-tat measure at a time when the country, remember, has launched an invasion into Ukraine. Britain, interestingly, has banned the Russian flagship carrier Aeroflot from flying into its airspace. Now, Austria's national carrier, the Austrian Airlines, has also announced cancellation of flights to Russia for at least the next 7 days. Meanwhile, Bulgaria, Poland, the Czech Republic, the Baltics, Germany and Slovenia have all closed their airspace to the Russian carriers. This step, of course, comes in response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. German airline Lufthansa has said that it is halting flights to Russia and will stop flying over the country for the next 7 days. Now, the Ukrainians' airspace, remember, has of course been shut to all civilian aircrafts, and the Eastern European nations are now monitoring their airspace very carefully. Moldova, south of Ukraine, has also banned commercial flights, while Belarus has said that civilian planes can no longer fly over its part of the territory. The map on your screen, of course, shows a total blackout of the Ukrainian airspace after a number of countries issued guidelines prohibiting their airlines from flying over the Ukrainian airspace. Meanwhile, the United Nations Civil Aviation Body has condemned the violation of Ukraine's airspace after the Russian invasion. In a statement, the body said that the invasion violates Article 1 of the Chicago Convention, which established the ICAO, as well as the rules of airspace rights and air travel security. Now, the International Civil Aviation Organization Council has about 36 member states. The Council has urged Russia to cease its unlawful activities to ensure the safety and security of the civil aviation in all affected areas. It also has called upon Russia to respect its obligations under international air laws. Now, the ICAO is not a global regulator and does not have the power to impose sanctions. It is a forum for states to set international aviation standards. Meanwhile, countries are also using alternate routes via neighbouring countries to evacuate their citizens. An Air India Boeing aircraft which departed from Mumbai for the Romanian capital Bucharest to bring back the Indian citizens who were stranded in Ukraine is, of course, expected to arrive later. Now, Russia's invasion into Ukraine has divided the world. The United States and its allies in the West have tried to project a united front against Russian aggression. But Russia, too, has mustered its allies. So let's take a look as to who has backed the war and who has condemned it, and who has remained neutral during Europe's worst crisis since the Second World War. So let's start with the American-sponsored draft resolution to the UNSC. The draft sought to deplore in the strongest terms Russia's aggression against Ukraine. The draft resolution, of course, remember, was bound to fail. Russia is a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council and therefore vetoed the draft. What is interesting is that countries like China, India and the United Arab Emirates have abstained from voting, while 11 nations, including the 3 permanent members like the United States, United Kingdom and France, and 8 non-permanent members, including the likes of Albania, Brazil, Gabon, Ghana, Ireland, Kenya, Mexico and Norway, voted in favour of the draft resolution. Now, far from being isolated from the international community, despite the sweeping sanctions, Vladimir Putin has in fact managed to cement his ties with China. In his visit to Beijing in the first week of February, Moscow and Beijing entered into a deep strategic partnership with no limits, and where the two allies agreed that there are no forbidden areas of cooperation for the two of them. And also, Russia, through its strategic intervention in the Syrian civil war, has earned an ally in Bashar al-Assad. Since 2011, the United States pursued a policy of regime change in Syria, and by backing the rebels who are fighting against the government, the United States was seeking to oust Bashar al-Assad from Damascus. But Vladimir Putin, firstly through military aid from 2011 and then through direct military involvement in Syria from 2015, has helped Assad turn the tide of the Syrian civil war. And what is interesting, that Russia also has its only Mediterranean port in Syria, the Tartus. It also exercises close control of the Syrian port of Latakia, and this has turned Syria into a stout Russian ally in the region. Syria, interestingly, is also the only other country after Russia to have recognized Donetsk and Luhansk as independent republics after Russia. Now, the Russian Deputy Prime Minister Yuri Borisov was also on a whirlwind tour of the leftist nations in the Western Hemisphere from the 16th of February. He met with the leaders of Venezuela, Cuba and Nicaragua and signed a series of strategic cooperation agreements on aspects such as trade, energy and financial cooperation. Russia's decisive intervention into Kazakhstan has also reiterated Russia's position of preeminence in Central Asia. In the month of January, Kazakhstan, of course, remember, erupted in a nationwide unrest sparked by a spike in fuel prices. But Russia, leading the CSTO troops, managed to crush the protests in a short and decisive operation. Most Central Asian nations have maintained friendly relations with Moscow and have not condemned Russia's invasion into Ukraine. So although the United States has been working its diplomatic levers to try and isolate Russia for invading into Ukraine, the fact remains that Vladimir Putin, so far in the conflict, has successfully managed to call the American bluff and has also shored up support for the Russian nation in this war. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.